All right. So, have any of you guys had a situation where there's just a clear miscommunication? Maybe that's at work and there's a task that needs done, and someone says, hey, this person's going to take care of it. That person is, in fact, not taking care of it or is doing it the completely wrong way. Anyone? Yeah? This happens. Or maybe it's a relational thing. You and significant other or family member are working through an issue, and one person is like, I understand. I know what you need. And they, in fact, do not understand or know what you need. Right? Anyone been there? Yeah? Yeah. Relatable, right? A very short example of this for me is my girlfriend, Leela, and I. We were going out to dinner, and I think it was like our 10-month or something. I don't remember. But I was like, hey, let's dress up a little bit nicer, right? Not like super nice, but like a little bit nicer. And what that meant for her was like, I'm going to dress nice. What that meant for me was I'm going to wear jeans. It was these jeans, actually. And I wore a gray sweatshirt. And she's like, is that nice? I go, what do you mean it's gray? That's a nice color, right? And very just clear miscommunication because she looked really good and I looked like a bum. And there's just like this awkward moment where she's like, I feel overdressed. And I was like, do we go back to my house so I can change so I can look nicer too? And we said no, and we just went out to dinner anyway. Anyway, some very similar-ish vibe, but on a much different scale and vibe happens in our passage today. So, we are in the triumphant entry of Jesus. You can actually go back real quick to that other one. So, the context of this is right after Jesus has healed Lazarus, or raised him from the dead, rather. So this is a picture of Jesus doing just that. Now, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. This wasn't like hey, let's give him CPR. This was like a big deal. This was like, this guy smelled bad. The body had settled a bit. And so this was like a massive, huge miracle, big deal. And it really thrust Jesus into the spotlight and caused all this commotion. And because of that, the Pharisees, who are the religious Jewish teachers at the time, they were kind of upset because Jesus was getting all this attention and all this power and all this stuff that they're like, no, we don't like that, because the more Jesus is raised up, the less they're held to high esteem, right? So they were kind of like getting jealous of Jesus, but also they were afraid because Jesus getting pushed as the Messiah or the king and all this stuff that everyone was saying that he was, meant that Rome was going to start paying a little more attention to them. And Rome was in charge of them, and if they thought there was some kind of Jewish uprising, there could be things could get a lot tighter and a lot stricter. So they were scared of that too. And so now we coming into our passage, which you can change slides now, is John 12 through 19, which is the triumphant entry of Jesus. So right after all this stuff has just happened, now Jesus is like, all right, we're going to declare who we are, and we're just going to read that now. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there. Otherwise, you can just follow on the screen. It says, the next day, when the large crowd that had come to the festival heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took palm branches and went out to meet him. They kept shouting, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel. Jesus had found a young donkey and sat on it, just as it is written, and this is from the prophet Zechariah, do not be afraid, daughter Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt. His disciples did not understand these things at first. However, when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered that these things had been written about him, and that they had done these things to him. Meanwhile, the crowd which had been with him, when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead, continued to testify. This is also why the crowd met him, because they heard what he had done. Then the Pharisees said to one another, "You see, you've accomplished nothing. Look, the world has gone after him." So this whole thing, the triumphant entry of Jesus, is for Jesus to say, my time has come. My time has finally come. You see, you can change slides. Jesus, he comes riding on a donkey, and he's at this point, Jesus, throughout the Gospels, has done all these amazing miracles. He's done all these amazing teachings, right? And what he's taught is revolutionary. It's transformative. It's these mighty things, these spectacular miracles. He's, at different times, turned water into wine, multiplied food. He's healed the blind, lepers, lame, all of like the worst conditions you can think of. He's healed them. He's calmed storms. He's done incredible things. And then in our previous chapter, John 11, he raised a man from the dead, which is like just an insane feat. Like if people who were following Jesus because of what he had done, they probably thought, yeah, he can multiply food. He maybe can affect molecules or something. He's pretty cool. Yeah, he's kind of got control over the weather. He can heal people. That's sick. He can't raise someone from the dead. That's like really the only thing they hadn't seen him do. And then he does it. And not just someone who's been dead for like a second, their heart stops, and then CPR. This is like dead, raised them from the dead, right? And after every single other one of his miracles or amazing teachings, people are like, he's the king. We need to go make him the king. And he says, tell no one. He'll say either I tell no one or my time has not yet come. I think you can change slides. But now Jesus is saying definitively, my time has come. My time has come. He isn't saying like anymore, hey, don't tell anyone. Now he's pretty proudly declaring what he's doing. In all the previous Gospels, or even in John before this, about 20 times at different points, Jesus has said something along the lines of, don't tell anyone, or my hour or time hasn't come yet. And I always was confused by this. Why wouldn't Jesus want people to know who he is? Why wouldn't Jesus want people to know what he's doing, right? That was always confusing to me. I'm like, Jesus, you're a freaking baller. Tell everyone about it, right? But he's like, no. And I always wondered why. And this question has kind of sparked this term called the Messianic secret. And it's basically the idea that Jesus knew that if he was named the Messiah, if when people were declaring him king, he was just like, all right, I did all these cool things, yeah, go make me king. Because they were trying to make him king after he fed the 5,000. After all he did was multiply food, and people were like, this guy's him, make him king. And he's like, no, not yet. And it's because Jesus wanted to continue preaching, teaching. He wanted people to know who he actually was, what he was actually there for. He wanted people to know him, not just be wowed by his amazing miracles, right? Because he knew all he did was go and do all the cool things, they'd be like, that's all we need to see, make him king. And that would just escalate all of the things we're about to see through this week, right? The Pharisees want to kill him already, right? They already want to arrest him and put him in jail and say, throw away the key, all that stuff. And he knows that if he was to just say, yeah, let's do it right now, people wouldn't really know who he was or what he was doing or why he was doing the things he was doing. And all the escalation of what is about to happen through Holy Week would happen just immediately. And so he's kind of pushing that off because he knows that he has things to say, he has things to do before this happens, right? But today, in our passage, he's like, no, he's declaring, this is my time. This wasn't like an unexpected thing. And this is how I always used to read this passage. Before I started studying this, I always used to expect that it was like Jesus was like, oh, that's the Passover. Every Jew goes to Jerusalem during the Passover. Of course I'm going to do that. And then it was like oh my goodness, you guys shouldn't have moment. He was like, oh, wow, for me, palm branches, you guys are so sweet. It wasn't like that. He planned this. This wasn't like an aw shucks moment. Jesus did this exactly like immediately after he had just done the most crazy miracle he's ever done. He knew people were talking about him. He knew that people were excited about who he was. It says in our passage that people were coming to see him because of what they had heard he had done, right? And then if you read the other gospel accounts of our passage, it says that Jesus sent 2 of his disciples to the town of Bethphage, which is right next to Bethany where Lazarus was raised from the dead. And he says he sent 2 of them. This is, you look in Mark 11, Matthew 21, whatever. The same story, but in a different gospel. It says he sent 2 of his disciples to go get the colt, the baby donkey that he was riding on. Right? So he had planned this. So this prophecy of the king coming riding on a donkey, Jesus was like, I want to fulfill that prophecy right now. And there was a number of prophecies that Jesus, he had no control over the fact that he fulfilled them. He didn't get to control that he came from the line of David. That was just a fact of something that was about that happened, right? He didn't get control that because of the persecution when he was born, that he needed to flee to Egypt and then could fulfill the passage that says, my son I call from Egypt. Jesus didn't get to control that, right? So there's plenty of prophecies that Jesus fulfills in his life that he had no control over. He just, because God had it planned and ordained this certain way, that those things happened. This, though, he's like, there's that prophecy. I'm doing that because I want people to know who I am. He was pretty clear. This is time. I'm going to declare my kingship now. I'm finally taking on the title that everyone who follows me has been urging me to take on this whole time. And then later in our passage, in John 12:23, he says that it's his time, right? Like I said in all the other Gospels, or all of John before this, he clearly will say, my time has not yet come, not time yet, all that stuff. Don't tell anyone that I just healed you. Because he knows that then it's going to perpetuate the urge and the desire that people have to make him king. But now he's like, nope, it's time. He says it's his time, right? And then he comes in, almost identical to how a Roman general would march into a conquered city. Oh, you can change slides. I think there's an image of that, right? Just riding in, victorious, weapon in hand, on their war horses or in their chariots. Nearly identical, except the difference is he's riding on a donkey's colt. And since before Jesus was ever born, this is how this scene was described. Zechariah described him being humble and gentle, riding on a baby donkey, right? So he could have come in and been like, hey, I'm going to come in on a war horse, in my chariots, army behind me, conquered city, like vibe that everyone wanted him to come in with. But he knew what he was supposed to do, and he knew how he was, and so he came in like this, humbly, on a donkey, right? So he's coming, and he's finally taken on this title as king that everyone has been pushing him to take on, but he's doing it in a way that they didn't expect. So Jesus is coming as the humble king, right? He's coming as the humble king. You see, the Jews at this time had been under Roman control for around 100 years, maybe a little under, right? And they were desperate. They had been praying for probably this whole time, honestly, for God to come and deliver them from Roman control. And they expected this Messiah, this king that was coming, to come in, kick out Rome. They're like, well, if the new king's here, then that means the new kingdom's here. And if the new kingdom's here, then that means we're surely not going to be controlled by another kingdom. We're our own people now. Like, we're in charge again, right? That's what they expected. And it's not a stupid thing to expect. So they were excited. They're like, Jesus is here. And it's because they wanted him to finally give them the thing they wanted so badly, which was freedom from Roman oppression. But he didn't come in this ready-to-conquer manner, right? He came humbly sitting on a donkey, a baby donkey. And what's crazy is some of the other gospels describe this donkey as a donkey that had never been ridden before, right? So he probably would have come in more triumphantly if he had just been walking. Rather than like on a tiny baby donkey that has never been ridden before, he's probably shaking and unsteady. He's extremely vulnerable. This is nothing like a war horse or a conquering general coming to town, because he would have been like much safer if he just walked in. What's up, guys? But he comes on this baby donkey because it says something. He's coming in vulnerable, unsteady. Not with an army, not with weapon in hand, but with his 12 buddies behind him. Right? And the people were excited for his entrance because they'd already seen all these mighty miracles that he had done. And they're probably like, all right, regardless of appearances, regardless of what it looks like, he still did all this stuff. And now he is still saying he's king. So maybe Jesus is just like bad at PR. He doesn't really understand how like a king's supposed to look. So he's just like, it's cool, Jesus, but like, we'll work on that. Maybe when you come into town, like, maybe later we'll get you a war horse and you can kick out Rome like we want, right? And this is kind of where that miscommunication is, right? What Jesus intended to do and what the Jews wanted to happen were not the same thing. Not the same thing at all, right? This isn't like a miscommunication, though. This isn't like me with my girlfriend where I said something and then didn't really follow through because I was being silly. This was a misalignment of priorities, right? What they wanted and what Jesus wanted to do were not in alignment at all, right? It reminds me of, I haven't seen this sitcom. It came out in the 80s. It's called A Different World. But I saw this clip of it on my Instagram. I thought it was like really cool. And also just when I was thinking of what to say during this, it just completely stuck out, right? And it's this guy, I'm pretty sure his name's Dwayne. If you've seen it, like, I have no clue what the girl's name is. So like, sorry if you're like really passionate about the show or something. But essentially, she had just been praying for a friend who had gotten shot to survive. And he did survive, but he also wasn't going to be able to walk anymore. So he was paralyzed. And she's like mad. She's like, why do I even pray to God if he's not going to answer the way I want him to answer me? And Dwayne, the guy in the red over here, he tells this story. He says, when I was 10, I knew exactly what I wanted for Christmas, right? He said, I wanted this Kareem Abdul-Jabbar signed basketball. And he continued, I prayed for it every single night. I took a picture of it, and I'd take it to church with me so God couldn't mess it up. He knew exactly what I wanted, right? And he continues, he says, on Christmas Day, guess what I found under the tree? He said, it was a winter jacket and a red hat with goofy little pom-pom on top. And he said, I was mad at God. I was mad at God. He said, I still went to church, but I didn't sing. I wouldn't sing because I was mad at God. And he said, but that winter it snowed really bad. The basketball courts had 2 feet of snow, and everyone either got the flu or frostbite. Everyone but me. Because I had my winter jacket and my goofy red hat. He says, sometimes God gives you what you want when you pray to him. Sometimes he gives you what you want. Sometimes he gives you what you need. But he always gives you the strength to get along with what you get. Right? And you see, the Jews, what they wanted, what they'd been begging for years, they wanted freedom. They wanted freedom from oppression from Roman rule. They wanted to finally have a government that aligned with what they believed. This isn't a bad thing, but it would have only helped them momentarily, right? It wouldn't have helped them with the real issue, the nagging issue of sin, their sin, right? If God had relieved them from Roman rule, they wouldn't have been saved from the true problem. The late Tim Keller, he's an amazing pastor and author, passed away a couple years ago, but he says it like this, and you can change slides. He says, sin is the servant putting themselves in the place of the king. Therefore, salvation was the king putting himself in place of the servant. He says, do you know why you have worries this morning? It's because you think you know the way your life has got to go. You think you know what you need. And that's you putting yourself in place of the king, because he knows what you need. You see, Jesus had given them, if he had given them the things they had wanted, he wouldn't have been correcting any of the wrong thoughts or bad behaviors. And what Jesus wanted to do was give the thing they needed. And what they needed was for Jesus to come and be the king that he knew he needed to be and do the thing that he had planned to do. So the next point is that Jesus is the gentle king of our lives. He's the gentle king of our lives. Jesus has made it clear that he has a purpose and he has an agenda. He didn't come to earth for nothing, right? And this is clear in our passage, but also throughout all the scriptures, right? He's come to free us from something much deeper than Roman rule, much deeper than oppression. He wants to free us from the very thing that would make another human being say, I want to have power over another human. He wants to free us from the very thing that would make someone want to oppress another person. Yes, he could just free them from Roman rule, and that would be awesome. That would help them right then. But guess what would have happened? In a couple years, they would have gotten powerful, they would have gotten stronger, and then they would have said, guess what? Maybe I want to oppress someone else. Because that's what we do. We take advantage of other people. That's because of sin. Right? So he came today in a very humble manner to boldly declare something. He said, yes, I am the king. I am the Messiah that you want, but I'm not going to do what you think you need. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I have something better to do. And Jesus came to save us through weakness. Through weakness, right? Not coming as a conquering king on his war horse, weapon in hand, to kill the Romans and push them out. No, he came in weakness. Since Jesus began living on earth, he had made himself weaker. He was God made man. He made himself weaker. Could have made himself the son to some king or ruler somewhere. Instead, he made himself poor. He made himself weaker. He could have come in on a war horse, in a chariot, with an army behind him, but he came on a donkey because he was making himself weaker. And he wasn't planning to do what they wanted him to do. He was planning to die on the cross that next week. Not to defeat Rome with his strength, but to die to Roman rule for our sins, for our punishment. Right? Unlike any other religion, Christianity, what Jesus came to offer, wasn't strength, wasn't do all the right things and then you're strong and then you're righteous and now through your own strength because you did all the good things and you did all the right practices, you get to go to heaven. No. It was because the king took the place of the servant. He took the punishment we deserved. He suffered in our place. And if you know anything about Jesus, you know that if you choose to follow him, you're following someone who has experienced all the hardships of this world. He's experienced temptation. He's experienced the loss of friends. He's experienced judgment from others. He's experienced all the world's pain. He's experienced all of it. And he did it because he loves us, because he loves you, right? If you've ever gone to the Lord in prayer and come away upset because what you wanted didn't happen, you didn't get what you want, God didn't answer the exact prayer that you wanted to happen, I'm sorry, it's tough, right? Sometimes that new job offer that you're really expecting, you're really wanting, it doesn't come, right? Sometimes that person you've had a crush on forever that you're working up the nerve to talk to them, they don't like you back, right? Sometimes the loved one that you care about so much that's sick doesn't get better. And it's hard. Everything I just listed is stuff I've personally experienced, right? And I know that you guys have experienced much worse than these things too, right? But the gentle and lowly king does give you the strength to carry on with what you get. And he loves you even when you feel unseen by the whole world. He cares for you even when it feels like no one else does, right? He is the king of the weak. Throughout his ministry, he didn't go to the proud and the strong. He didn't go to the kings. He didn't go to the Pharisees. He went to the poor, the beggars, the blind, the lepers, the prostitutes, the tax collectors. He went to the bottom of their society, and he loved them, and he cared for them. Because he is the king of the weak. He's not our genie. He's not this magic lamp that you can rub to get exactly what you want. He's not. I know some of us always, we wish he was sometimes. But if you're honest with yourself, you start to recognize that the hard things in this world, they're because of us, our brokenness, our sin. But if you know Jesus, you recognize that there's hope from that. He doesn't promise that all of your issues and all your problems will suddenly go away, but he promises that he'll be there with you. He promises you'll have peace, peace that goes beyond understanding. So today, if you're wondering why Jesus isn't giving you all the things you want, I can tell you, if you choose to follow Jesus, if you choose to have a true relationship with him and believe that he came and died on the cross for your sins because he loves you, you might not get what you want, but you'll get what you need. You can't save yourself through your strength, but Jesus, through his weakness, can save you. So I just ask that if you don't know Jesus today, you would accept the humble and gentle king into your life, because he will save you. And he will give you what you need, right? We're going to end it with prayer, and then we're going to do communion together. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you for who you are. Thank you for how you've loved us, how you've revealed yourself to us, Lord, that you came and you lived a perfect, sinless life on earth, despite all the temptations and hardships you experienced, Lord. I thank you that you did this, that we might know you, we might be brought near to you, and we might have a relationship with you. Lord, I ask that you would just help us to live our lives for you, that we would know you and we would love you, Lord. I ask that you would just bless the rest of this day. You would bless us as we go into worship, and you would be glorified through it, Lord. Pray these things in your name.